everyone, it's Tanya from My Fancy Design Shop, and today I'm going to go over my updated watercolor lettering and illustrating brush set for Procreate. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, it had about, I think, 10 to 12 brushes. Now it currently has 27, and what I've added is more of a basic lettering brush, so you have more control as to where the dark edges and the water stains are. And I also added some paint brushes and illustrator brushes, more blenders, water stain stamps, and splatter stamps. So I'm just going to go over some new tips and tricks that I've learned along the way since filming my first video and going over the new paint brushes. So right now, here is one tip that I have really loved to do. Now, I think in my first tutorial with my watercolor lettering brush, the one that has all the texture built into it, I showed you that some letters might overlap into each other, and I think I suggested using the smudge tool to just kind of smudge that overlapping area. So what I prefer now is to work in layers. So I'll have my letter. When I know this exit stroke is going to overlap into the next one, I'll add a new layer above it and I'll start lettering. And kind of the best thing is to keep your Apple Pencil on the canvas. I know it goes against all calligraphy rules, but that's one way to avoid getting the exit strokes overlapping into your next letter. But when you work in layers, you just go back down to the L, you grab your eraser tool, and you can just do that. Erase that area, and then you can merge them together. Now, to use the basic lettering brush, you don't need to work in layers. You don't need to keep your Apple Pencil on the canvas the whole time because it's all opaque. So what you want to do is first letter your design. You want to alpha lock it, and you can add your colors with the monoline brush. So just kind of color it in where you want it. I kind of like to overlap my colors a bit to get some realistic, fun blends. Okay, so now we have our colors. I am going to duplicate this just to show you another easy way to blend, but we're going to work with this one. So some of the new brushes, I have my color stamp here. You want to use it as a regular brush, and what you can do is go along. I'm going to change kind of that size, and you can also change the opacity, and you just want to stamp on your color. Now this you have, it kind of gives you like a realistic blend to it, but it's a little bit more work because you have to go back from one color to the next. Or you can grab one of the blenders as a smudge tool. So you want to click smudge tool. This first one, the color blender one, is a little bit more, if you see even here, it's a little bit more jittery. So in shape. And so if you see here, so what you want to do is very light strokes. You can actually change the opacity to it, and you kind of just have to work with it. It really depends. So we have that. Or you can grab the color blender too. And with this one, it's a little bit more of a smoother transition, not as jittery. And I like to kind of either go in circles very, very lightly, like this, or I will kind of drag the color a little, and I'll go back and forth. So let's just finish this out with this blender right here. Okay, so that is one way to blend your colors. Another way is, so I'm going back to my original layer. You can add a Gaussian blur. So you want to make sure this is still an alpha lock. Go to Gaussian blur, and you can just blur those colors together. Really easy, really simple. This is up to 25.7, but you can go as much as you want, little as you want. It really is your preference. So to add the dark edges, you want to add a clipping mask. to it. You're going to set that layer setting to overlay, and you're going to grab the color black. You're going to grab the dark edge blender right here, and you're just going to go along, no, that's a little bit too much. You're going to go along the edges of your lettering. Now, you don't have to be super clean about it, because what we're going to do is we're going to blend it out to smooth it out a little bit more. Okay, so we have that. Now, two ways to blend it out. You can go back to your smudge tool, grab your dark edge blender, and you can, by hand, kind of smooth it out a little bit more, so you still have that dark edge, but it kind of smoothly blends in with the inside of your lettering. Or, let's go back, or you can just do and add a Gaussian blur, which is super easy, and just blur it out a little bit. And then you could go back and kind of soften up those areas. We can add our highlights. So we're going to add another clipping mask above it, grab white and the highlight blender, and you're just going to kind of go down the middle of your lettering. I have a very light stroke, so not a lot of pressure, and I like to go down the down strokes of it. You can also add a slight Gaussian blur, a little bit, go. And then next, what you want to do is add another clipping mask. You're going to set that to overlay, color black, and this is when you can add your texture stamps and your water stains. So I'm going to grab one of the water stains and I'm going to stamp it. So you see, because it's on a clipping mask, it's only going to show up on your lettering. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it, and I'm going to add it where I want it. So say I want it on the L here, I'm just going to kind of position it right there. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to add another clipping mask, changing that to overlay, and I'm going to add another stain to it, and I'm going to stamp it on and then resize it and add it where I want it. Kind of just move it around a little. Sometimes also I will bring down the opacity so it's not as strong. And that's how you add the water stains. Next, to add the watercolor texture, you're going to do the same thing. I know we're working with a lot of clipping masks, but it's going to make it so much easier to change things if you decide to. And like if you wanted to take off or remove the water stains, it won't be on the same layer as your base layer, your lettering layers, which means you wouldn't have to start all over. So that's why I'm a big fan of clipping masks. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of my texture stamps. This one is actually kind of, you can put it, show you. No, it's very intense right now, but you can put it right where, let's see, where the colors kind of meet. So this is kind of act like a little bit of like a bleed into it. So those are really fun. That's a little bit too intense for me. So you can add them. Also, what you can do is if you just want to use the same stamp, you can just duplicate it and then move it somewhere else, which is a lot easier. So see, I'm going to put it there to add kind of like a kind of watercolor bleed to it. Okay, now back to my texture stamp. I'm going to add a clipping mask, change that to overlay. And I am going to grab the first one and I'm just going to stamp it on. And what you can see here, I don't know if you can see here, you see the difference? That's the texture over it. It's just going to have a little bit more texture. So I am just going to make sure it covers my entire lettering. And then what you want to do is add your paper texture over on top. Add it to multiply so it pops through your lettering. You see how it's going right through. You can have the option to, to bring down the opacity so it's not as strong. And that's how you use the new stamps, the stains, the water stains, the textures, the blenders, and also the basic lettering. You can use these with the textured lettering brush if you prefer, but you don't need to. It's all optional. Okay, next I'm going to go over my paintbrushes. Now these are really fun. Some tips, let me just show you. easiest way to use them is to color it in and, or, you know, draw, but keep your Apple Pencil on the canvas the whole time. If you don't, you're going to get that overlapping look. If you want that, by all means, just, you don't have to worry about leaving your Apple Pencil on the canvas the whole time. But it will be harder to blend because you're going to lose, let me take my paper texture off. You're going to lose kind of already what's built into the brush. So if you can tell with these paintbrushes, the watercolor texture, some of the water stains are built into it. So once you start blending, you're going to lose that texture. Which is okay if you don't mind, because you can also add your paper texture over it and then add those texture stamps and water stains. But if you want to avoid this, what you want to do is just draw your shape. And here I'm going to show you. You see how, like, if you used a different color, it's going to overlap like that. What you can do is add a clipping mask, grab your new color, grab the monoline brush. Yeah, that's not the best color to show you. Black. And you can color right on top. And you see how you still have that texture, and then to blend it, you can do a Gaussian blur like that. Or you can grab one of the blenders as a smudge tool and you can move around the colors. You'll have more control as to where the colors go. So, so you have that. So that is one way to add colors. If you wanted to have multiple circles, say this is your first circle, I would then add a new layer, grab your paintbrush, draw your circle or your shape, whatever you want to do. And what you can do then is go down to the bottom layer and you can kind of blend this out. You just got to be kind of careful so you don't go outside, you see, outside of the shapes. And you can do it that way. Or you can, oh, I lost my shape. Let's do it again. Or you can draw on your next layer, your another shape on your top layer. And then what you can do is just erase the overlapping area. Next, let's go over the magic paint brushes. So as you apply pressure, the color is going to change going clockwise on the color wheel. So I have kind of like a yellow gold, and this is very light pressure, and as I apply more pressure, it's slowly turning to pink. Same thing with the paintbrush 2. This just has a lighter effect to it. Also, let me just go back. I know I'm jumping around. This is the paintbrush 1, and this is the paintbrush 2. Now, if you can tell that the texture is a little bit different, there is a darker edge to the paintbrush 1 than paintbrush 2. The second one has more of like a blurry effect to it. But you'll notice that as you play around with it. Illustrator brushes are pressure sensitive, so as you apply pressure, it gets thicker, and as you let up, it gets thinner again. So these are really great to do leaves, any details. So I've been really enjoying just doing this, and I do like it when they overlap because it gives that really cool, like a watercolor look. Okay, so you can try to do some florals with them too. This is probably the only floral I really kind of know how to do. I don't even know what you would even call it. Is it like an hibiscus or something? Or I'm not really sure. But yeah, I'm playing around with the pressure as I am going around. And you can do florals that way, which are really fun. And then you can just add a stem, some leaves. Again, I think these are some new splatter stamps you can use. I have my splatter spray. Here's a new one. So really fun. I actually just did this on my Instagram, and I used my desert garden, where is it, stamp. To make something easier, let's just do like a cactus. I'm going to stamp it on, and I like to use reference, so I'll reference that layer, add reference to it. I'll add a layer below it, and I will just drop in white into those areas. So you see how like they're on different layers, but it's in the shape of that stamp. I'm going to alpha lock them, and I am going to grab kind of like a green color, and let's use my magic brush. We'll use this one, the magic brush one. And what you can do now, because we're on that white layer, I can color it in, and as I apply pressure, do you see how I have like a lighter green and a darker green? And then I'm going to go to the next one, light pressure, and then more pressure is that other green. Okay, so I colored it in with my magic brushes. You see now that even if I take off that outline, it's still pretty cool. It gets that really cool texture to it. I can merge them all together. I'm going to take reference off, and what I'm going to do is then add a clipping mask, and I'm going to do all the other steps that I've showed you with the lettering. I'm going to add my dark edges to it, and maybe some highlights and some water stains, and this is how you can easily create some great digital watercolor art that's not going to take you forever. What you now can do is add your paper texture right on top, and then you can even add some water splatters or watercolor splatters. So I really like this one. This has been my favorite so far. And then I'm just going to pull up some other colors. And I like to put these on their own layers because I have more control as to where they go. And there you go. Simple, easy watercolor art. When I paired it up with my desert garden stamp, you can use it with any other stamps you have or even sketches. Just by using that reference layer, adding white, and then just painting right on top of it. What really makes it stand out is when you add all those water stains and dark edges and textures. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And if you want to grab this set, you can grab it at my website at myfancydesignshop.com or at Etsy. All the links will be down below in the caption. And yeah, happy lettering, happy creating.